Welcome to the Afropolitan Podcast, hosted by Eche Emole, founder of Afropolitan. On the show, we chat with Afropolitans whose footprints form the foundation of systems dedicated to building the future of a bold and progressive Black community. In each episode, our guests share their working formulas, the hard facts about leaving familiar terrain, embracing the unknown, and staying relevant afterwards. Listen as we extract the blueprints of fearlessness, innovation, and progress.
So I play football, and this morning I played with my old group. I mean, because I've not been in night since, I haven't played with them for a minute. So I played with them and I scored. And my normal celebration is just a simple, just shake everybody. And then somebody was like, "Oh, I need to do the baby celebration." I was like, "Yeah, but I'm going to have to stretch my hand very wide."
Because it's fun. It's always a lot. It's a lot, man. But thank you for finding the time to do this podcast for sure.
Come on.
I already talked to you about like our strategy with the media, right? It's like we need to have media that speaks for us, and for a lot of times, I'm a big believer now in decentralized media, right? Like talk directly to your customers, let them know your philosophy, let them know your worldview, and then build distribution that way too. So if you can build in-house distribution through podcasting, which is also low-hanging fruit, right? Like, especially like with this tech that Ike has on his platform, literally has been recording out. This can be posted today on the platform, done. And for a long time, you couldn't really do that with podcasts because there's a lot more like complexity involved, right? But Ike has like so much experience with audio. I don't know if you remember True Sports Audio back in the day, True Sport Radio back in the day, the internet radio station. He was the founder of that as well, so he definitely has experience. Okay, yeah. Can you hear me well though? Yeah,
I can hear you. I feel like I dropped the app and it kicked me out, so I'm just gonna have to keep the app open.
This is your Android app, Sha.
No. So it's my first time using it, but I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about Clubhouse though? Like, with what happened, what are your thoughts?
I don't think it's over. I think it was still. This is like the correction phase. I think things will still pick up. So yeah, I think this is the correction phase. But look, audio, at least audio, the way people are doing it now, the content creation mode, where it's not just one-sided like you have in a podcast. Where people are able to chime in, and it's two ways or multiple ways because you have audience members who are engaging in real time. I think that is definitely created richer experiences for folks. I just think it coincides with the period when people are over or getting over remote work, and I started to embrace face-to-face interactions again. Yeah. So I feel like it's one of those things that will get back, would probably stabilize as people get back to work, but they realize they also like their online friends and they like their globalized conversations that they were having. Because, the perfect timing, it was just a perfect storm, being trapped at home, you couldn't do any other thing, you couldn't see your other friends, and it was just an opportunity to kind of like connect with multiple people. So as people are going back to their old friends, their old lives and all of that, I feel like at some point they'll be like, man, these people ain't shit. Let me go and meet my online friends. Let me continue my online conversation today.
Life is about balance too, right? So like, as you said, it self-corrects in both ways for sure. That's definitely. But no, to definitely have a proper introduction, I would like to welcome you to the Afropolitan Podcast. This is a show where we interview Afropolitans who are shaping the world and their innovative processes as well. Welcome.
Thank you, man.
Again. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure being here.
So I wanted to start to give people a little bit of background, right? Can you talk about first how you got into tech and the transition to, because I feel like you've led all these programs from Google platforms and then the venture platform as well. How did you get started in those fields? Yeah.
So I have a mix of the typical tech story. You know, as a kid, got bought a computer, started getting very intrigued with it, and then the natural progression was to try to figure out how this thing works and whatnot. But I did start off early. I did start off early. My first tech engagement was actually in designs. So, and I had strict parents, so I wasn't allowed to go to parties and all of that. But if you went to parties from like, I don't know, from like 2000 to like 2006, there's a high chance that the invitation you held in your hand was designed, printed, done, all of that by me. So 2000, 2000 I was in like JS3, and then I started playing with like graphic software. So by the time I got into senior school at the end of 2000, I started saying, oh, you know what, all you guys are organizing parties, all the 1145s, all the
I remember
Club
1145.
all the Bacchus. Do you remember Bacchus also?
Yeah, I remember
Bacchus is actually what I've done to, I think 57 now. Anyway, all those parties, I was like, you guys, your IVs suck, man. I can design better IVs.
Terrible designs.
And what I would do then is I'll go into like all this magazines from the US, from the UK at the time, mainly from the US, and I'll try to like replicate their designs, and I'll take it as a contract, design, print, and then I'd also keep a few IVs and sell on the side too. They'll give me complimentary IVs as part of my payment. Like I'll collect money, but I also try to sell on the side because I wasn't allowed to go. Anyways, so that was like my first foray into tech. And then when I finished secondary school, by pure chance, I was supposed to go study medicine. That didn't pan out. Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I said by pure chance, I was supposed to go study medicine. While I was waiting at home, I went to my uncle's computer training school where they were teaching like hardware and web development. This was like 2004. And I was very intrigued. And by some stroke of luck, well, it was unfortunate at the time. I had something happen, so I couldn't travel. And then I spent that whole time just like learning about tech and learning about how computers work and the internet at a glance. And mind you, this is the time. So we had the computer training school, but they also had this cyber cafe business, which was like in the same complex but a different shop. So this is the time when you charge people like $1,000 to like check their emails, and like 2,000 naira to like open, maybe not 2,000. Actually, I don't remember the amount. Maybe like 1,000 naira or 5. It was like the equivalent of charging somebody 20K today.
Yeah.
To open a new email address, and maybe like charging them the equivalent of like 5,000 naira to help them check their email or something. So I don't remember the actual amount, but that's how new the internet was at the time. So did all of that. Eventually changed my course to study computing. Eventually morphed from studying online full time to doing a first degree online. So I actually have my first degree that was done online completely because I was working the whole time. So that was my background. That was my intro. Obviously, I've gone back to school a few times. I now have 4 degrees in tech.
I was going to touch on that for sure.
Yeah, so I've gone back to school a few times. Most of them were full-time degrees, not online. But for me, part of the natural evolution, and you kind of see that with tech people, is you start off, you're passionate about computers, you're passionate about technology, but you quickly realize that technology as itself is not what will change the world, but technology is an enabler to whatever problem you're trying to solve.
It can
So
amplify
with
it.
that mindset, yeah, exactly. Technology will basically help you amplify whatever problem you're trying to solve. So with that mindset, moved into banking, started building product and infrastructure for commercial banks. Did that in investment banking also. Did that for finance house. And then moved into consulting. All of this was tech, the tech perspective. And then you offer tech solution, then they ask you the commercials of it. And then you're like, what's going on here? I don't understand the commercial. So I realized very quickly that I needed to get into the business world. And so I started talking to like some mentors, like, how do I pivot? And I remember one of my mentors at the time, I was like, we're working in this bank together. He was head of investment banking. I was in the IT department. And he told me, there's a reason why you can never be CEO of this bank from where you are. It's because they would always treat the people that make the money over the people who help them make money. And so remember that in every business. And I remember leaving that conversation thinking, I want to be CEO too. So that's how I moved. Literally, that's how I moved into business. So when I had an opportunity, I went off for an MBA, came back, and then started consulting for a tech company. But the difference at that point was it allowed me to do full range. So it wasn't just the technology consulting; it was also the finance. It was also doing due diligence for M&A acquisitions that they were looking at. So did that, and then 2016, I think, after I got married, it was just pure nirvana. My wife's boss at the time was talking about, he told my wife, I'd like to meet the guy you're getting married to. This is early 2016. We got married in June, so this is probably like February, March. Like, let me just meet the guy you're getting married to. That's one of my best staff is getting married now. So I go and have a chat with the guy. It was supposed to be just normal. I went to pick her from work, actually. I said, okay, I'll come just before you close so I can pick you from work.
Yeah.
I think at the end she had to take a taxi and leave me in the office.
You guys just hit it off like that, yeah?
We just hit it off like that. We spent a lot of time. You know who this person is. You don't realize it is, but it's Kola, I know. So and that's essentially how my work with Ventures platform started. So anyway, we shared ideas at the time. I was like, I'm passionate about startups. I'm affiliated with a few at the time, Passion Incubator. So they were doing non-cash support at the time. They were getting equity from startup, but not cash. Essentially, they would treat the startups like an extra co-founder. So they'll do BD for you, do open doors, spend time on parts of your business. But he was trying to set up Ventures platform. So he was like, I built this fantastic building in Abuja, nice container stuff. I'm building. I need a team. I was like, team is nice now. I was telling you where to hire people from, what to look for, and people to hire.
It's like you,
and then I
bro.
go. No, the thing is, in all honesty, it wasn't even me. He wasn't even thinking of me. So at the time, I was working for a company called Venture Garden Group. And the parent company before Ventures Platform is a company called Emerging Platform. So VGG and EP were direct competitors, and there was like heated competition. It's kind of like you're working in Bain and you're talking to a McKinsey partner.
Yeah,
do you get that kind of, that's how it was. So I mean, I could leave, but it wouldn't be. I could leave, but it wouldn't have been without small controversy because I was I was pretty senior at VGG also. So anyway, that happened, and I got married, got back to my honeymoon, and I was like, I really want to work with startups. So I hit him up like, I'm back in town. Or he's like, come by the office. I don't know. I called me like a Wednesday, like come by the office on next week Monday. Let's chat. So I get there, I see people wearing suits and all that by the reception. Me, I'm wearing I just got back from honeymoon. I'm chill. I'm wearing like a polo shirt, like jeans and sneakers. I think I even had a face cap or something. So I walked past all the people wearing jeans and shirt. I walked to the second part of the reception. I grab a GQ magazine or whatever magazine they had and start cross my leg. And I'm like, you guys sell drinks here? So I'm so chilled and all that. Then like 10 minutes later, they called me like, Mr. K is ready for you. I was like, okay, cool, where? I go in and I see homie sitting down with like 3 other people. It's like a panel. So in my mind, I'm like, what's going on here? So literally, it turned out it was an interview, and all the other people sitting outside with suits and holding their CVs were there for the same interview.
Are you
And that's why I laughed.
serious?
I'm telling you. So that's essentially how I got into like core startup support. Because they were asking me questions. I was treating it like a fact finding journey. Like, oh, you guys want to know? So yeah, it's like, how would you do this company? I was like, these are my thoughts. I've been thinking about this. And then at some point, they're like, okay, so if you had to start, where can you start? I said, I'm not looking for work. Literally, I told. Then I remember one of the people at the panel. He was so pissed. I was like, so why are you here? I turned our collar. I'm like, why am I here? I just came to greet collar. So
My days.
And so I left there. I went to grab lunch at the restaurant. Collar's PA meets me there. She came to buy lunch there also. And then she's like, yo, I don't know what confusion you just caused there, but I think they're going to call you back. I was like, well, their luck. Long and short, that's pretty much how I started startup support. So Ventures platform, we set up an incubator first, early stage. And then obviously reading the market, it was an uphill task, setting up an incubator program from scratch in Abuja when the whole world was talking about Lagos and Yamba.
Yeah.
But we were trying to prove a model that it can work. Sorry, one question.
So no, that's why I wanted to even transition into. So how would you then describe the evolution of the tech ecosystem in Nigeria? And what are the major points you would point to that are like pre this major point and then post this major point?
So we've had multiple inflection points. When you think about the way tech has evolved in Nigeria. So I mean, I come from like pedigree of proper software and hardware engineering, like watching my dad build assemble computers to being able to assemble, and I'm talking like the mid 90s, to assembling computers myself, to Omatech and Zynox and the likes, building to Computer Village, starting off properly, and then you have like the tech ecosystem that we know today, probably 10, 12 years from them CC Hub setting up shop where it was more like a hobbyist association of guys who would just come after work and hang out. So the first wave of them Jumia, of Paga actually, of them Paga, Konga, Jumia, Iroko, that wave of entrepreneurship. And that wave wasn't without its own accelerator incubation hits, because that's when you had them 440 Labs, that's when you had Lead Path, and I'm sure you know that Easy was in one of those accelerators at the time. And then the Piggyvest guys were also in one of those accelerators, but as push CV at the time. So you have that wave, and then you have the current wave. I think some of the significant pointers or rather the most significant pointer I see that has changed is kind of like it's now a founder's market. So when you think about capital, when you think about user base, and knowledge sharing and customer education, the founders are now in the front seat driving it. Before now, it was a lot of, we have to support these people, we have to help them, and so you could also dictate the terms of your help. You could summon a founder, tell them, come and sit down in my office for 1 month, otherwise I'll not give you 20K check.
or 20K check for 50% equity.
Sorry, I said right now, if you try that, the founder would just put out a tweet and they'll raise the money. Lots of options to raise money, but also they can tell you to go screw yourself. So but it's not just for fundraising; it's also for user information. Founders are now at the point where they can take their product to the markets themselves. They can sell what they're selling, and they can gather insights from the markets in real time. So I think that is the significant change.
Lower barrier of entry for sure. So then, by the way, Fola, I realized that I hadn't even congratulated you about the Bet King announcement to the multi-choice. I wanted to congratulate you. Also congratulating Kosi as well. But it's definitely a huge achievement. Can you talk about your transition to like head of Bet King, and what are the insights you've learned from the lotto business in Nigeria that you might not have been aware of before you joined?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, thank you. So I don't know when this airs, but whenever it is, it's going to be in the future. So I transitioned out of my betting role actually last week. So the end of May was. But it's still, obviously there's still a lot of not to take away heat. I mean, I don't think I'll take away heat from the announcement that is being made, but part of the
actually let's let our listeners even know what the announcement was. I think do you mind sharing it with our listeners?
Yeah. So the announcement was pretty much a 250 odd million investment into BetKing for an additional. Well, I mean, in some total for an additional 29% of the company. So last year, the MultiChoice Group, who are the owners of DSTV, pretty much the biggest satellite TV brand on the continent, and a global player also. So they purchased 20% holding of BetKing for 80 million direct and about 31 million based on some other conditions. So that deal was worth about 111 million at the time. But last year they also announced a further purchase by MultiChoice Group and some of their subsidiaries on extra 29%. So their ownership of BetKing now is about 49%. So it's not a controlling stake yet, but they are the majority shareholders right now, but it's not a controlling stake yet. But more importantly, it just shows that there's also space for entertainment and gaming in kind of like the tech ecosystem, let's call it that. Basically, what had happened was, people look at the gambling, the gaming, the entertainment space, and they oftentimes think, it's a space that they're either just printing money, or they think, it's full of blue collar folks that are being exploited. But for me, leaving Google and going in there to kind of like build products properly, it's back to that point I made earlier about tech being an enabler, irrespective of the sector that you're in. So, for context, my role at BetKing was as the head of Lotto King. Lotto King was the second brand under the Kingmakers group. So BetKing is the betting brand that has done very well, and Lotto King was kind of like the second product offering that they were going into. So I set up the infrastructure, the people, the company essentially from an idea to a product that is ready to launch at this point. So my transition and some of the things I've seen, just understanding people's trends and the way people approach products. So as part of the things I do on the side, I teach product development, and gone are the days where you had the waterfall model of software or product development, where you just have an idea, you think about it, and then you build, and then you get to the end and you ask for feedback. Right now, you build on your way down, or your way up. Let's be serious. You build as you go on. You approach the market, you listen to the market, you listen to what people are asking for, and you build. You try to understand customer trends and you build. Betting is one of those, or sports betting is one of those sectors that you can, as a whole, you can either differentiate on product or you differentiate on marketing. So sports betting is one of those places where you differentiate on marketing, because the product offering needs to be great, but because there's such low customer loyalty, it doesn't cost a customer anything. I mean, obviously, except they have a wallet system, but it doesn't cost the customer anything to move from BetKing to BetNiger. The switching cost is significantly low. So what you want to do is you want to find other things that entice the customers, that attract them, that excites them, also that keeps them motivated to your brand. And so that's what we did at BetKing, and took 3.5 years to become a unicorn. So I guess when the timing is right, they will tell their story properly. But that is truly impressive for any type of company, talk less of a betting company.
Definitely. So then let's transition to, because you're also the founder of Kickoff Africa. I didn't know if you had announced that yet, but I think this is going to
I am.
air in the future. So we might as well address it now. What would you say is the investment philosophy for Kickoff Africa when it comes to backing founders and just the investment philosophy in general, really?
So I am the founding partner at Kickoff Africa. So Kickoff is really a mix of everything that I've done up until this point. So Kickoff is three things. Kickoff invests, so quick capital, quick decision making, quick turnaround time. Kickoff is also placement. So we have something called a bench, where we have an expert marketplace where we connect founding teams to experts who they otherwise might not have access to or cannot afford. Yeah. And then the third is Kickoff is training. So we have specialized training for very unique stuff. So whether it's leadership, whether it's operations, whether it's product, Kickoff offers trainings for that. So in terms of our investment thesis, I strongly believe in the apprenticeship approach to building businesses. So I believe that you need to spend enough time understanding your problem, understanding the space before you branch out. And so as a result, we're more favorably disposed towards repeat founders or founders who have some domain experience. And because what that does for you is when you have the domain experience, you're able to very quickly identify where the problems lie and what most the best opportunities will be. So that's kind of like what we do at Kickoff. And the goal is to really strip off the frills. When you think about investing, you have two types of investors, or you have multiple types of investors, but you have investors who say they're helpful and investors who are actually helpful. That's how I want to break it down. So if you're doing anything that doesn't help the founder, you're not being helpful. If you're doing anything that's not serving, you're not being helpful. And if you're doing anything that's helpful, you're being helpful. I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but that's the way I think about it. So obviously writing it, everybody crosses that first level helpfulness. But then investors who claim to be helpful and just ghost you or start to give you extra work, that's not. So I haven't spent a lot of time with founders. I've seen that one of the most important things that they need is good people.
Yeah.
I've seen that they clamor for good people all the time. They're like, people are hard to find, partners are hard to find, employees are hard to find. In fact, one of the favorite things I like about Shola, the Paystack CEO, is I've known Shola for a long time, but I've also known him on this journey of Paystack pretty much from the early days. And consistently, from then up to tomorrow, every time I see Shola is asking me about who do I know that I can hire for this role? Who do I know I can hire for that role? So that
and he seems to always want the best people, right? Like he doesn't.
Oh yeah,
he wants the best people for each role.
The type of people Shola has asked me about, sometimes I just open my mouth like, this boy, they fear. Like imagine looking like an international firm and asking, do you think I can hire their partner? Or looking at the company and saying, do you think I can hire their CEO to come and lead our product thing? And he's done it. I mean, he's done it over time. And so, when you look at that kind of model, and the same thing with GB, to be honest, the same thing with Tayo at Paga, the same thing with Mitchell at Switch. These guys are consistently looking at asking, how do I find the best people that would join the team that would build this vision together? So that's kind of like the way I think about helpfulness and some of the things that I'm skilled to do, which is essentially finding people and saying, okay, this is the best person that can help you do whatever you want to do. So that's kind of what Kickoff does.
And if you can speak a little bit more to how Kickoff differentiates itself from the rest of the funds and the ecosystem. And I think because it seems to me like Kickoff has a lot more product-minded people in the management system, or what would you say to that?
So yes and no. So it's not a. In fact, actually, I would say no. It's not more product-minded people. It's more. We like to think of ourselves as connectors, and so when you think about the partnership of the partnership layer of Kickoff, everybody there is a hub in some way. So everybody there is somebody who, in their own ecosystems, that others um, are centered around in a good way. So and that would help me answer your question as to differentiation. So we think about it like, okay, we can write you a check. Everybody can write you a check. In fact, we want everybody to write you a check. But when everybody writes you a check and you say, oh, I need somebody who has done, when you send your investor updates and you say, we're looking for a head of sales, we're looking for a head of operations, somebody that sold B2B in East Africa, for example. What Kickoff does with our bench is that we just look at our experts and we say, okay, of these people, it's like an internal job board, and we say of these people who has experience that our startups need. And we hope that we're able to provide that at a fraction of the cost. That doesn't come to us, goes to the experts directly. So, you think about it, like I've seen mentorship work, and some of the best mentorship models I've seen are the types that cost both the founders and the mentors something. So rather than just saying that, free time to chill, you see it as time spent working on an outcomes-based project with a startup. So that's kind of like our core differentiator. We get people, and also the training component, because we're all passionate. The partners were all very passionate about educating founders and educating people generally. We offer both cohort-based and individual trainings for the founding teams and the leadership of the startups that we invest in. So for us, I think it started from the conversation of capital is cheap. We're slowly getting to the point where saying I have money to invest alone is not going to get you a seat at the table.
Definitely.
And so you have to be able to bring other things. And for us, it's one, the connection through the expert bench, and two, the training.
Okay. I like that. So then let's talk about the cryptocurrency ban in Nigeria. First, what are your thoughts about crypto, and what did you feel about the ban itself?
So, I remember we had a session in one of the Afropolitan groups when the ban was still fresh. The ban is senseless, as we are seeing with the government. Once they don't understand something or it doesn't work the way they want it to, their first reaction is to ban first, ask questions later. So that's a senseless move. But it's ended up working in our favor. It's worked in our favor. It's definitely slowed down adoption. That I will say, it's absolutely slowed down adoption. But it's worked in the favor of the crypto exchanges because it's allowed them almost build multiple product layers. So before now, they were pure exchange, cash in, cash out activity, have good float. Right now, they're able to, one, reduce their risk, while still earning their commission, so they don't have to keep huge floats. But more importantly, they're now mindful. It's like going into the world and initially being super naive and thinking, oh, this is all prim and proper. Because the crypto companies were to the moon, basically, up and to the right, everybody. But you're getting to the point whereby they're course correcting and saying that, okay, maybe things will not always be rosy, and how do we prepare for that? What we're now seeing is the second level of cryptocurrency companies coming out of Africa that are still getting huge traction, but they're understanding their users more, and they're having to build products that are tailored to their users more. So what that does is it will strengthen the local market. So I see the number of times Binance sends a notification that they will slow down their P2P product, but the bundle guys, the buy coins guys, are not slowing down. They're building, because the difference is bundle, buy coins, Bitnob, Patricia. These guys have teams on ground.
Yeah.
So I see how it's benefiting the companies in the long run. It's growing pains because it's a clusterfuck that nobody wanted. But long term, I think we'll be better off for it. The first question around crypto and what do I think about crypto? I absolutely love the premise of crypto, decentralized nature of it, and providing an alternative to fiat. I think of it like most people think about it. One, a store of value, and two, a means of exchange. I've personally benefited, having lived in two countries, I benefited from using it not just as a store of value, but also as a means of exchange. All through last year and early this year, I would make money in Nigeria, easily transfer from my crypto account to my wallet. And when I need the money in a week or two, I will just sell into my UK account, and it was seamless like that. And if you remember, you and I personally, part of the reason why I started asking for P2P people for money transfer was because it was after the ban, But before the ban, I'd lived successfully in two countries, just based on my crypto. So, and multiple people, you want to send somebody money in some remote country, some remote island, you just send them crypto and it just works. So I still strongly believe in that, and I'm even excited to do some work in that space. I want to, as an aside, I want to personally invest in a crypto company. I haven't done any yet, but I'm also looking forward to writing my first check for a crypto company.
Well, which crypto companies have impressed you so far, though? If you could speak to any ones that you've done.
All of them. So product-wise, and I say this on I say this everywhere. Product-wise, Bundle is the smoothest product I've used, and I've used them all. Like in terms of just user journey, and Bundle was like the first. I mean, I downloaded Binance before, and I even had a joke about it on my Twitter where I put like a picture of a cockpit. I'm like, this is how it feels like when when you open Binance, and that shit went viral for a bit. But Bundle from a user experience standpoint is just smooth. Now, buy coins from a commitment to educating the user standpoint. I think the team led by Timmy and somebody I'll call out, especially Teju, are really committed to like educating users about crypto, and I see the way they offer documentation for their new products and whatnot, and that's really good. The Bitnop guys are doing amazing because they're like one of the first to offer crypto-backed fiat loans, and I think that is a product that I personally would have used. You know how you count your crypto. You're like, I shouldn't have sold. The market went 10x or 20x. So it's a product that definitely the market needs and needed. So they've impressed me that they've been able to pull that off quickly. Let me see. Patricia grew very fast, very young team that have grown very fast, very, very quickly, served their niche market, but they've grown very fast, and you can't take it away from there. Even Paxful with their American Ray. Yeah, so I mean, Ray with the Paxful guys, they're very passionate about the country. They're constantly selling the country. And even just beyond this crypto ban period, Ray has always been somebody who's very excited about, just telling the story of crypto in Africa and portraying Nigeria in a positive light. And I'm very, so these are 5 crypto companies that off the top of my head, I can think of as doing amazing work. And I would be very happy to have a slice in any of them.
Definitely. So, let me ask you, what role do you believe like culture plays in, first of all, startups, but specifically in the Nigerian startup system? Because from my perspective, having worked in some of them or been around some of them, I always feel like culture is something that they ignore till they have to face it. So what role do you feel like culture plays in the startup ecosystem, the culture of the company?
So culture is important, irrespective of where you're building your company, and I think just being mindful of that helps set the stage for founders. So it's interesting you mentioned your observation, spending time with Nigerian spending time with Nigerian companies and whatnot, I've also spent a lot of time with companies. So I actually did my first dissertation, my first master's on second master, sorry, on culture for Nigerian startups. So I've spent probably the last 7-8 years or so just studying. And you're right. What you see happen is a founding team assemble and they're like, okay, these are things we want to do and this is what we want to be known for. And then they just go to bed. And as with most things, if you're not deliberate about it, it wouldn't happen. So I think culture goes beyond what you put on your deck. Culture goes beyond what you tweet about, but it's in the small things and the way you handle small things. So part of what I teach when I talk to founders or when I teach founders in a training session is there's a concept of hyperbolic discounting where we essentially put things that we put things that are right in front of us. We prioritize thinking about this and we are more deliberate. And then if something is further down the line, we spend a lot less time thinking about it because we're like, yeah, when we get there, we'll figure it out. And to explain this concept, I usually give the example of would you rather, if I said, okay, $100 today or $120 in a week, which option would you think? $100 today versus $120 in a week. You think, today versus 7 days. You think. Some people would say today. Some people would say in a week. I don't mind in a week. But if I say, okay, $100 in 52 weeks, which is a year, or $100 in 53 weeks, which is a year and a week, almost everybody says, 53 weeks. And they say it very quickly, like, if I've waited 1 year, I might as well wait another day. And they don't think about all their needs or any other factor. They just think in that moment, I've waited this long, I'll wait an extra 1 week. And so it's the same way in startups. We prioritize the things that affect us today. So deadlines, product launch, investor meetings, all of that is today. So you think harder about it. You think about multiple factors. You factor everybody's timeline, their emotions, and all of that. But when it's culture, when it's handling, resolving conflict, when it's talking to people about behavioral traits, when it's handling disagreements or people-related stuff, you'll be like, yeah, we'll figure it out in the future. And so what tends to happen is you build a culture, unknowingly build a culture where you're not deliberate about these things. And if you're not deliberate about it, you're just going to build a toxic culture. Just because the nature of human beings, if left to their vices, human beings would by default just be nasty. So that's just the way I think about culture, that people have to be a lot more deliberate about their culture, and they need to be deliberate from the get-go. So they need to very explicitly state that these are the things that we do, and then do it. It's not so much about talking about it. It's about doing it in the everyday things that happen, in the everyday things that happen. I see founders also, they want to wait till there's a big defining moment and they want to now act. But it's not just until you have a crisis or until you have a big press moment. The way you handle tardiness to meetings, the way you handle unprofessional conduct, the way you handle harassment, the way you handle heckling each other, the way you handle leveling and the way you basically the way you handle everything. That's your culture. It's not just until you have a big moment and you say, okay, how do we treat our employees in that big moment? It's every day. So I think a lot more founders need to spend more time being more deliberate. It also has to do with the founding team themselves. So
and that's what I was going to ask you. What advice would you give then to founders about selecting their founder team, their team, and also their co-founders as well?
So, I'll get to that in a second. Actually, I can answer that. So, you think about co-founding teams, the way you think about a relationship, and this is pretty much what everybody says. You think about it, who would you rather, if you had to spend the rest of your life, or at least the next 5 to 10 years with somebody, who would you rather it be? Would you want to work with this person? Would you be comfortable being affiliated and all of that? And so you should try to understand the person just beyond the skill set. But the skill set is very important. In fact, that should be the first basis of the conversation, that do we have complementary skill set where this person can pull their weight and bring something to the table that otherwise we wouldn't have had, just so that we can feel the impact of the person. And what I've seen is when you're starting out in business, the natural thing you want to do is you want to start with somebody you know. And but the most risky businesses are started with friends and close friends and family. It's sad, but that's the reality. Just because if things break, there'll be a huge chance of the relationship beyond work breaking. So most of those type of relationships usually hang on the thin thread. The best type of co-founding team are people who have worked together in the past. So whether they've worked as colleagues in an office or they've worked on a project before, but their affiliation is more from a work. I've seen their working style. I've seen them. And so I encourage founders that, look, when you want to start your team, yes, it's good to want to start with your friend, but also look for people who you worked with in the past, who you know their personality type, but you also know their output quality. You can say, okay, this person will pull their weight in sales. These people will sell the hell out of this thing, or this person will build the hell out of this technology, or this person would handle the operations to a maximum. And so that's what I think about. The other thing I was going to say earlier on to end the culture point was, a lot of the businesses that we see today have required, at some point I call it adulting as a service. Just I'm serious. Just bringing in maturity, whether you call it coaching, whether it's leadership, strengthening the leadership team, whether it's essentially just some maturity. I mean, and even some of the biggest companies in the world have had their phases, whether it's Google, with Eric Schmidt coming in, whether it's Facebook with Sheryl Sandberg coming in, or whether it's Apple with Steve Jobs going to have his moment in the wild before coming back. So and when you even strap it down, but you've also seen founders who have evolved into becoming more mature, more solid leaders over time. Like Mark is perhaps the most perfect example. Mark Zuckerberg. Founders who over time have just evolved into being that leader. So what I encourage founders to do early on is don't be too, or rather have the self-awareness to know that there are things you know and things that you don't know. And there are things that you don't know that you don't know. And that's the worst place to be in, operating in the blissful ignorance of not knowing things that can kill you. Because unlike the movies, in startup land, what you don't know will kill you and will most likely kill you.
For real. So then let me no, sorry. I wanted you to finish the point.
Go for it.
No. What I wanted to ask was, it seems like in the startup ecosystem, there are times when some people start up their businesses with their friends, right? And their friends are probably generalists, right? But then as you start to scale, you might need some specialists to come in, and your friends might not be able to scale with you. What would you say is the best way to navigate that situation at that point? Have you seen anything like that where people just can't, like, they're good as a generalist, but when it comes to the specialization of the task or project that needs to be done, they're not the best person. So what advice would you give to the founder? Like, hey, how should you handle this type of situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you see that all the time. In fact, you see that most times when the founding team is more than two people, there's a high chance there's a generalist in there that 2-3 years down the line is going to feel, he or she is going to start feeling like, okay, what can I do here? And so there's two core approaches that I've taken in the past. The first is to move as generalist as a person is. There's always going to be a role. If the business is maturing, there's always going to be a role that suits maybe it's where they started from, or maybe it's a recent interest. So maybe it's a sales role.
Part of the recording. Okay, I think he's back on. Ike, are you good? Yeah. Okay. So I think we can back up like 30 seconds and then go back. So we're talking about the generalist. Yes. I'll ask the question. Okay. So, Fola, what are your thoughts on situations where a founder finds themselves where they've started a company with their friends, and their friends are generalists, right? But now they need to transition into the specialists. How should they navigate that situation with either maybe discussing with their friends? Does it come across as a demotion to their friend if they're bringing in the specialist, you know?
Yeah. So I was saying that I've seen this play out two ways. The first way is most generalists are generalists out of necessity. So they start off from somewhere and then they realize, okay, we need to plug in multiple gaps, and then they start plugging multiple gaps. Now, the more you bring people in, initially you bring in entry level or junior level people, then you bring middle level and then senior people, or you just bring senior people to build out their team. I've seen two ways that the generalist type function have happened, especially if the generalist is a hardworking generalist. So, I mean, I think the first caveat is if this founder who's generalist is just faffing around, then you need to get rid of deadwood. I'm very vocal about that. Everybody should pull their weight. So if the person is faffing around, absolutely get rid of. If the person if you don't have an operations lead, and this generalist is somebody who can pull all the operations together, it's always a natural fit to, move that person into that operations role. But the other thing I was going to say was, because most generalists will still have something that excites them. So whether it's they like the marketing aspect, they like the sales aspect, or they like product or whatever, you can typically move them into something that excites them the most. And you can have that very practical conversation that, look, we need to take away some of your powers, quote unquote, but we need to now consolidate all of that in one aspect of the business where we feel you'll be most effective, because we're getting to the point where we can't afford to have people stretched thin, And it's all about communication. It's the way you frame it so that the person sees that, look, at this point, it's no longer about our egos or about us. It's about what's good for the business. And if there's a proven leader who can do this, which would be great for the business, then let's do that. That's the first way. The second way is sometimes the hardest, but it's sometimes the most practical. So there's a concept of team roles. I don't know if you're familiar with Belbin's team roles. So there's essentially 10 team roles that a person can play on a team. So it starts from plans. It's the person who gives idea, to resource investigator, to specialist, to completer finisher, to a team member. So there's 10 roles. And having that practical understanding that sometimes your role is a plant, which is you're the one who gives the first set of ideas, who gives its first life to get things started. And your once there's some stability, your impact might be better served elsewhere. And for most people who are plants, they know that they are plants where they're great at giving that initial idea and fighting for stuff and just launching it at all costs. But when it's time to be an implementer or a completer finisher or a specialist, by the way, so an implementer is somebody who takes the idea off of a plant and just builds something. A completer finisher is somebody who's very detailed. It's almost like the Q&A, because they're the ones who close things out and make sure that everything is right, while a specialist is just good at one thing. So you can have a completer finisher who's a completer finisher across 10 different things, but a specialist is just specialist on one. And then you have other roles that are more focused on teamwork and whatnot. So the second approach is to tell the person, look, I acknowledge that you're a plant, you're an implementer, but at this point, we need specialists, we need completer finishers who are going to drive this thing deep. And so you still have your equity in the business, but you might have to bounce or give them an option to sell the equity in business if they want to. So essentially just having those two options where one, we can move you into a role that is specialist for one aspect, or you can just tell them, you know what, you want to move out. Because at every given time, even though when you start out, your business is about you and maybe your friends and associates or whatnot, but the business has a life of its own, and you always need to prioritize what's good for the business over everybody's sentiments. And that's just the way I think about this.
But
And it plays out
Fola,
all the
man,
time. Yes, it plays out all the time.
yeah, it does. It does, definitely. But Fola, I think we're already approaching the 1 hour mark. And I think, I feel like we could talk for hours. That's just me, I feel like we could talk for hours. But I really, truly appreciate you taking the time to do the podcast, bro. I like the whole idea behind the podcast is like for a lot of times, right? These conversations happen internally and we don't bring it out to the public. And I think what we're trying to do is build that ecosystem and build that community really that connects the diaspora to the motherland and the talents that are involved as well. And I think when we have these sort of conversations, it gives us an opportunity to go behind the minds of the people who are really helping shape our future. You know, and I appreciate you for really coming on to the Afropolitan Podcast, and I hope you have a great weekend, bro.
My pleasure, man. Thanks a lot.
Definitely.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be a part of this.
Always.